Today we're going to be talking about the book Freedom's Ferment by Alice Feldtyler, sorry. Okay, this book basically has a main idea. This idea is that free societies produce prosperity, liberty, uh, order, justice, and have better possibilities to achieve greater results as a country, as a community, as a society. Uh, there is uh, a theory called spontaneous order. This theory basically says that is the spontaneous appearance of order emerging from chaos through a self-organization in communities and nations who see freedom as their most important value. We see how these thinkers were not so wrong after all. People, common citizens in America, have challenged social standards and have taken initiatives for change without necessity of bigger motivators than the desire to see a better society and leave a legacy. And as an example of this, we see the very beginnings of the first settlers. William Penn wrote an essay in which he developed the instructions for an international tribunal which could be able to handle disputes between nations, getting way ahead to his times. It was just necessary a little bit of freedom for the first settlers to start developing their thoughts and design plans, political theory, and later actions to transform our realities. Along with him, many other published, like Bennett, who published his pamphlet Thoughts on the Nature of War, where he argued against war in general due to the damages it provokes to combatants, and Benjamin Rush, who proposed the creation of the Peace Office. This all was due to their Quaker faith mainly. Quakers were not the first to believe in and preach on a pacifist ideology. Uh, the founding principles, I'm sorry, Quaker were, many medieval religious movements were also defendants of the idea of peace as a way to live and respond to diverse situations. However, these Quakers were intending to build a nation. The nation uh, The founding principles will be kept unmovable, guiding the decisions and actions of future settlers of the American country. Things didn't stop there. The peace movement in America had many different representatives, like the merchant and publisher David Low Dodge and William Ladd, founders of the American Free Society. All these movements, people, and events happen to prove that free society can learn as well or govern itself, create adequate conditions of safety, prosperity, and order, and improve every day with the simple actions of a few individuals whom decided to go beyond its duties as citizens demanded from them. Likewise, a free society can eventually, as long as the core of its law and institution be the defense of freedom, lead to the increased freedom, public participation, and involvement of every time more people into the public life and the defense of that people's right. The movements for the right of women are a consequence of this freedom, despite the fact that probably the founding fathers did not have in mind the rights of women when planning the future of American nation. They set the ideological and institutional frame for it to happen and succeed. The wives of many legendary American heroes and important political men were decisive in the destiny of those men. Danielle Boone's wife, just as any woman who packed to follow their husband to her east, was important in this phase of history. But that was just the beginning. Women started to demand their rights as citizens and taxpayers as early as the last decades of the 18th century. Annalee Corbin protested for her right and every woman's right to vote. Captain Basil Hall expressed his concerns about the level assigned to women in American society. Some people in Europe thought that America was way behind them, and in some aspects it was true. In 1860, David Dudley Field, an eminent jurist, wrote that women are not owners of their own labor, but their husbands were. He reinforces this idea of woman as a perpetual child and her husband as a legal guardian. But women still in their fight and champion for their right to an education. One of those women was Abigail Adams, wife to John Adams. She wrote to the writers of the new constitution about the importance of providing education to women in the same quality and expertise that it is provided for men. She struggled for education for women for many years until education reform succeeded, when many more women started to fight for education for their own sex. Probably we still have a long way to walk in Western civilization regarding the rights of women, and many distortions about the real rights of women. Nevertheless, the seed of freedom planted on Americans' heart will continue to provide always, by trial and error of societies, the best results. Even when the very same foundations of the democratic life and republican institutions have been challenged, those societies have found a way to mature and understand better the privilege of living in such societies. We can see many examples of events in American history when the main democratic principles were attacked by the same beneficiaries of those principles. In the first half of the 19th century, there was an anti-Masonic movement caused by some mysterious causes, but which provoked a great movement rooted to erase Masonry and ban it from USA. Some argued that it was due to some rumors about the secret rituals of Freemasonry and strengthened, according to some others, by the recent Great Revival. Another problem faced for American society was the mass immigration. Mass immigration is always a problem when the immigrants don't share the culture and the worldview of the host culture. Irish immigrants had a rough start in the United States. Stuck in urban poverty and taunted by some of their neighbors, they and their descendants overcame the obstacles and prevailed. In the century extending from 1820 came to the United States 5 million Irish immigrants. Their presence provoked a strong reaction among certain locals, known Americans as nativists, which denounced the Irish for their social behavior, their impact on the economy, and their Catholic faith. However, through the early 20th century, the Irish had successfully assimilated. Nativists launched a sustained attack against Irish immigrants because of their Catholicism. In 1834, a mob burned down the Ursuline convent in Charlestown, Massachusetts. In 1836, a New York nativist published a pamphlet entitled The Awful Disclosures of Maria Monk. Monk, a young emotionally disturbed, claimed to have witnessed debauchery and infanticide during her stay in a convent. The book became a bestseller. In 1844, Nativist rioters burned two Catholic churches in the Philadelphia suburbs in a dispute over which Bible to teach in public schools, whether Catholic or the Protestant King James Version. But Irish integrated and helped to shape later the culture of northern USA. Nevertheless, the greatest challenge ever faced by America was the Civil War. The United States of America had joined just a little over 80 years when the nation was shaken by the Civil War, a nation where two societies, each with social, political, and economic different models, were forged, a nation which in 4 decades had multiplied several times in its territory, the Louisiana Purchase from France, Florida to Spain, the annexation of Texas, and the subsequent war with Mexico. Thus, in the space of a generation, a huge but still empty country was born, and as it was expanding, the problem of friction and prevent internal conflicts was also acquiring greater proportions. South agricultural production was sustained by the labor of slaves. It is established that in the South inhabited 3 to 4 million slaves. The issue of slavery was another key cause of conflict between 18 Between 1781 and 1804, slavery was abolished in the North, and in 1819 among the 20 existing states. 11 were slaveholders. The conflict began when the same year the admission of Missouri law was presented to the House of Representatives, but as a slave state, which the North-South parity would be altered, it came to a compromise. Missouri Compromise, where the new state would be admitted as a slave state, preserving the balance by admitting at the same time to Maine as a free state, and setting the dividing line 36-30 between slave and non-slave states. The moral posture, faith-based, grown in the North a strong abolitionist sentiment, calling for halting the spread of slavery and abolition of it. The political basis of these abolitionists will week later origin of the Republican Party. The slaves were constantly escaping their masters, considered by the South a conspiracy from the North. Some people claim that this story has left an hostility between North and South that remains until today, but we could also consider that this is not true and there is only a cultural significant difference that enhances the political differences to this day. However, at the end, freedom results in progress. Freedom has been the main value to defend and spread a noble mission despite of the missed chances. The history of the world is the history of struggle, conquest, and warfare, but mainly the history of ideas, ideas that succeed and ideas that lose and are forgotten. American ideas were never defeated. No country was ever perfect, but America led the world in the march toward its prosperity, equality, and freedom, a legacy that can make Americans proud of their country's accomplishment.